On December 6, 1991, Austin, Texas was hit with a horrific tragedy. The location, the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop. It was set on fire. What makes it horrific was what happened before then. It was a normal December night, and Jennifer Harrison and Eliza Thomas, who were both 17, were getting ready to close. And Jennifer's sister Sarah and her friend Amy Ayers decided to visit them just to kind of catch up before they headed to a slumber party. They were future farmers. They were very intelligent, very bright, and strong girls. According to police, someone entered the shop before it was closing to commit robbery. It was around 11 p.m. when someone entered, and they were trying to coax the girls into fulfilling an order. He took a gun out when they weren't looking, and what happens next is unimaginable. He forces the 4 girls into a storage closet where he demands that they derobe, and he ended up tying them with their clothes. Amy, who was 13, was separated from the group, and local officials say that she was SA'd, and after that, the attacker essentially executed them, and then he gathered paper plates, napkins, put them in the closet with the girls, doused everything with lighter fluid, and then set them on fire. According to Jennifer and Sarah's mother, the attacker had stacked the bodies. At 11:45 p.m., a police officer was patrolling the area, and he saw the fire, in which he called the fire department, and they showed up pretty quickly. When they discovered the bodies, they realized this was so much more. The problem with what happened next is because there was so much water trying to put out the fire, a lot of the evidence had been washed away. One officer said that the water puddled up into the shop and it shifted things around, including the bodies. The bodies were unidentifiable. That's how bad it was. The bodies had melted into the scene, and $540 was missing from the register. The police officers fielded thousands of tips that were phoned in by the concerned public, but nothing really concrete until the suspects emerged. 8 days later, the police talked to 16-year-old Maurice Pierce, who was blocks from the crime scene, and he was caught carrying a gun. During the interrogation, Maurice said that he lent this gun to his friend Forrest Wellborn, who was 15 years old, and that he did this. It wasn't him. But when they talked to Forrest, he denied all of those claims. Forrest told the police that Maurice and him had acquaintances that could have done this. 17-year-old Robert Springsteen and 17-year-old Michael Scott went on a joyride. They were up to no good. So the police dropped Maurice and Forrest as suspects after they told them about Springsteen and Scott. There was nothing tying Maurice and Forrest to the crime. The police arrested both Scott and Springsteen. In 2001-2002, Springsteen was sentenced to death and Scott was sentenced to 99 years in prison. Both of them signed separate confessions implicating one another. And that was after 20 hours of interrogation. You'd think that would be the end of it, but it's not. Scott and Springsteen were charged with capital murder, but in 2009, Texas Court of Appeals overturned the ruling on the basis that the confessions were improperly used and maybe even coerced, so the judge ordered them to be released. At this point, Scott and Springsteen are men, and they were pending retrials. And the confessions were tellings of what happened, but nothing was concrete. But the retrials were put on hold because in 2009, there was new DNA evidence found that didn't link Scott and Springsteen to the crime. The evidence didn't match the suspects, so all charges against Scott and Springsteen were dismissed. The convictions were overturned because neither Scott or Springsteen could testify and be cross-examined. So we're back at square one. There are alternative theories. According to police, 52 customers visited the shop that day. After the customers were interviewed, one woman said that she saw 2 men that came in towards the end of the night that were acting very strangely. They made her feel uncomfortable. They kept looking over, trying to assess who was in the shop, where was everything located. It just gave her a very, very uneasy feeling. One had light hair and he was in his 20s or 30s, and the other man was a little heavier set. One investigator said that the store owner next door didn't hear anything, implying that these men had full control over the situation, that grown men had done this because they were sadistic, evil, ruthless, way more than the teenage boys that they had originally brought in. Police considered that because these girls were strong and very intelligent, he couldn't see teenage boys overpowering them. One police officer said that one of the hardest things he had to do was go to the families and look them in their eyes and tell them that they were going to do everything possible to find who did this, that they will find who did this. They're back at square one, trying to find suspects and ultimately starting right back at the crime scene. $540 was missing. So this horrific tragedy was over $540. Police say that it could have been a robbery gone wrong. On August 3rd of this year, a bill was signed into law called Homicide Victims' Families' Rights, which allowed families to have victims' federal case files reviewed again and to allow for a full investigation, also allowing up-to-date technology to be used on these cases to dig up any new leads. It's been 31 years since this tragedy, but law enforcement and the families have not given up. I hope they discover new leads to solve this case and to bring justice to the families. I can't imagine after all this time. This case was definitely very horrific, and I don't think I can say much about the case itself because it's quite graphic what happened. But I will see you in the next video where I talk about something chilling with a dash of strange.